You're under trial right now. Or you're under...
Yes, it's essentially a trial.
You're being brought up on... You have to take social media...
Re-education.
Re-education
Yes.
from your province is saying this. Is that right?
It's a professional group, but they have delegated authority from the province. So there are regulated professions.
Okay.
And engineers, lawyers, physicians, psychologists, social workers, teachers. There's a few others. And if you're in a regulated profession, there's a professional body that governs professional conduct to which the public has access in case people misbehave. And so the Ontario College of Psychologists, it's college as in group, professional group rather than university. And it's the Ontario College of Psychologists that have decided to pursue initially 13 charges against me. They dropped 7. Why they dropped those 7 is a complete mystery, as is everything else they do. You can submit a complaint to the College of Psychologists online with a form. And so what's happened, at least in part, is because that's become so easy, it's become weaponized by activists. So, for example, if you want to cause anybody who's a professional trouble, all you have to do is submit a complaint to the college. The college will look into the complaint, every complaint, and then decide whether they'll proceed. Now, they're not supposed to proceed if the complaints are vexatious or, just troublemaking. But they've decided that me complaining on Twitter about Trudeau, for example, is unprofessional and a disgrace to the profession, which is essentially what I've been charged with, is being a disgrace to the profession.
So it's trying to hold up what they presume is some esteem of the profession.
That's the theory, and some professional standards. And I would say for decades that system actually worked pretty well because the people who sat on it weren't ideologically addled and the public wasn't using it in a weaponized manner. But that's changed completely. And now every professional in Canada, and I believe that to be true essentially without exception, unless they're on the far left, are completely unwilling to ever utter any opinion about anything in the political or their professional realm, especially in relationship to medicine and psychology. So I appealed this ruling. So the ruling essentially is that I have to take social media retraining with a social media expert. And I'd like to make it very clear, there is no such thing as, there's no profession.
Yeah, it's like the Wizard of Oz. Like, who is it going to be? Do you know the expert?
No, I don't.
That's crazy.
No, I've got a couple of names, but I don't even know what defines you as a social media expert, and neither does the college, and they don't care. If someone presents themselves as a social media expert, that's good enough. My sense is that if you're a social media expert, you have a podcast with millions of followers and you're doing just fine on your own, and you actually don't need to work for an idiot bureaucracy. But, that's just me.
Right.
So now not only do I have to be re-educated by this social media expert, but I have to do it at my own expense, which, is neither here nor there in some sense, but for an indefinite period of time.
Wow.
Until I've learned whatever the hell lesson I'm supposed to learn, and I don't exactly know what lesson that is, by their judgment, right? And so
it's all up to them. So it's kind of this vague thing that they've put you into, and they challenged you because they were upset at things you had said on Twitter.
Mostly on Twitter. No, well,
okay.
They also, and maybe maybe this can happen today. Somebody submitted the entire transcript of my last conversation with Joe Rogan as a complaint, partly because of what I said about climate change. Now, I am not a fan of climate change models, which I think are, to call them flawed is to barely scrape the surface.
So do you feel like, but they're challenging your things you've said on social media, right?
Yeah, well.
So do you think it's a challenge of your free speech? Is that what you feel like?
Oh, the court that ruled against my appeal essentially said that it was a free speech issue.
Okay.
And they said in their opening argument that according to the Canadian Charter of Rights, which was, by the way, instantiated by Justin Trudeau's father, Pierre Trudeau, and Justin's regime is in the process of absolutely gutting it. Anyways, I have a right to free speech according to that charter, but, and that's the next sentence, this very low-level bureaucratic institution has the right to abridge that essentially as they see fit, which means, as far as I can tell, that I don't have the right to free speech at all. And I should make very clear, those colleges should be intervening when a client or a patient, right, or a customer, depending on the regulated profession, has been mistreated in some manner by the person they're dealing with. Okay, the people that levied complaints against me, first of all, most of them don't live in Canada. Second of all, none of them were clients of mine. Third, none of them knew anyone who was a client of mine. They claimed harm, that I had done harm, on behalf of other people who they also didn't know. They also, a number of them also claimed to be clients of mine in writing in the complaint
But they're
forms. No, they're not clients of mine. And clients of mine, before I became politically known, let's say, I practiced as a clinician for more than 20 years, and I had zero complaints, and I had zero complaints levied against me at the university too, either at Harvard or at the University of Toronto. And the reason for that was that I treated my students, my colleagues, my coworkers, and my clients well all the time. There was zero problems. But as soon as things exploded around me politically, well, the people who've weaponized the colleges have taken that opportunity to go after me. And then the college, which is nicely infested by radicals, like almost everything else in the West, and particularly in Canada, are using this opportunity to attempt to make my life miserable. But we'll see whose lives are made miserable.
Wow. Yeah. Did you almost, was there a part of you that kind of was like excited about the
not to begin with. Like, it's not ever entertaining to face legal proceedings.
That's true.
You have to be a fool, generally speaking, to think that even if you're the one levying a lawsuit, you have to be a real fool to think that it's going to do anything but cause you a lot of grief and misery. Like, lawsuits are not entertaining, and I have quite a pronounced proclivity to feel guilt. And I went through this has been going on a long time, off and on for about 6 years. But
the ruling just happened, right?
Well, the court ruling that denied my appeal just happened.
Okay,
yeah,
I got it.
Because
so
I
now
appealed
you
their
have
right
to go through. You
well,
have
the
to go
next
through
thing,
with the training.
the next thing they have to do, I either have to go through with the training, or they can drag me in front of a disciplinary board. And my next move is going to be to say, hey, bring on the disciplinary board. They film those.
Wow.
I will put that on YouTube. So if they want to make the case that, for example, my objections to the trans surgical mutilation of children, I believe that to be wrong. Like, I believe it's actually a crime against humanity. The reason I believe that, by the way, is the UN definition of crime against humanity. One of them is involuntary sterilization. My sense is that if you're a medical professional and you sterilize a child, that's involuntary sterilization, because they are not qualified to give qualified consent, informed consent, as anyone with any sense recognizes.
Yeah, they can't even go on a field trip without getting a signature, right? Or, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So they can't.
Right.
Yeah, they can't go on like a
Yeah, there are hospitals now.
genital field trip.
Yeah, well, there are hospitals now when they inform the children of what's going to happen. For example, if they castrate them, for example, they tell them, the girls, obviously they're not castrating the girls, they're just doing double mastectomies and sterilizing the girls, but they tell them that they might have to have their eggs stored because this is going to interfere with their fertilization, and if they ever want to have children, well, that'll be what they'll have to do. It's like, well, you know, every 12-year-old is capable of, yeah, no kidding. No
scary.
bloody
It makes
kidding.
me sick thinking about it.
It is absolutely despicable. I believe that the people who've done this should be in prison for the rest of their lives.
So do you think
no
that
excuse
youth
for this?
speaking up against things like that are some of the reasons why they're kind of
I think that was the primary reason.
Really?
Well, I tweeted something out about Ellen Page.
Yeah, I
See,
remember
now
that.
we're in trouble. Now we're already in trouble. Yeah, I said, do you remember when pride was a sin and when a criminal physician cut off Ellen Page's breasts? And that got me kicked off Twitter, but that was also one of the tweets that was complained about, you know. And I had friends, I actually did a whole YouTube video on this. I had friends who kind of upbraided me for being a little harsh, and we talked it over on YouTube for about 90 minutes, and I don't regret it at all. In fact, I think that in the intervening year since that tweet or so, the tides turned very firmly in a direction that indicates that my suspicions were more than warranted.
Do you think so yeah, I think what I'm trying to think more about is just like the challenge, like about free speech, right? Like about how it's being challenged everywhere. It's going to be really strange if those people get you in front of a board. They're not going to do that.
Oh, I don't think they have a choice, actually. I think what they'll try to do is
sell
make sure I
pay-per-view to
don't
it?
publish it. You know, they'll try to keep it secret, but that ain't going to happen.
They should.
So,
you have to do pay-per-view.
yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
Crazy,
Absolutely.
Jordan.
Absolutely. I know.
Yeah.
When you
I want
asked,
to be your corner man. If there's rounds, I want to come in between rounds and
well,
just
you were asking
dab
me
your
if I was
brow.
looking forward to it. And like I said, you have to be a fool to look forward to legal proceedings. But I went through all 13 of the charges over Christmas last December, which was not a very pleasant 3 days, because you never know when you have hundreds of pages of paperwork, which I had to go through. You never know you never know when you might have done something stupid that's going to catch up with you, and everybody has stupidity in their past. And so I was pretty damn apprehensive when I went through all the paperwork. But the more I delved into it, actually, the better I felt, because not only did they make terrible procedural errors, like going ahead with the complaints of people who literally claimed falsely in writing to be clients of mine, and I think 6 of the complaints are like that, but it's just so utterly preposterous. I mean, 2 of the things they complain about are literally criticisms of Trudeau. And like, if I can't criticize a standing prime minister in my own country, there is something seriously wrong. One of them was his chief of staff. One of them was a city councillor. One of them was the trans issue that we discussed. One of them I criticized Sports Illustrated for presenting a very obese cover model, and I said that as far as I was concerned, she wasn't beautiful, and that no amount of authoritarian compassion was going to convince me otherwise. And they say the process is the punishment, right? And when you're facing, this is what's happened to me in Canada too, it's like I'm essentially facing an adversary that has indefinite resources and time.
Right.
And so
they just hope to, they can just
grind
smoke
it out.
you out.
You bet. They can grind me down.
They could make it. They could just keep.
They're not going to, though.
Right.
So they're not going to.